We are honored to have as our guest speaker this morning, Carolyn Normandin. Carolyn Grant Normandin is the Regional Director of the Michigan ADL. She is responsible for leading ADL's Michigan Regional Office, which focuses on combating anti-Semitism and bigotry of all kinds through advocacy, community service, and anti-bias education. Prior to joining the ADL, Normandin was the Senior Vice President leading operations, marketing, and sales at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Carolyn also worked for General Motors in a variety of areas, including the GM Foundation, public policy, brand communications, and diversity and inclusion. Born in Detroit and raised in southeastern Michigan, Carolyn earned her bachelor's degree in communications from MSU, and she's a graduate of the Leadership Detroit Cohort 36. Carolyn's on the board of directors for Alternatives for Girls and serves on the executive committee of the Coalition for Black and Jewish Unity. She is a tireless soldier on behalf of the Jewish people. She is a trusted colleague who really will answer her phone day and night, and for that I am incredibly grateful for all that she does for our community day in and day out. It is now my pleasure to welcome to the Bima of Congregation Shaarey Zedek, Carolyn Normandin.
Good morning. I am so honored to be speaking at this wonderful congregation today. As Rabbi Starr mentioned, I am Carolyn Normandin, and I'm the Regional Director of ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, as many of you know it. ADL itself has been in existence for 110 years, and this year, 2023, marks the 75th anniversary of the Michigan office. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism seems to be getting worse. And whether we're talking nationally or here locally, as Rabbi said, unfortunately, nobody at ADL is working themselves out of a job. But is anti-Semitism getting worse? The answer strikes a familiar Jewish and fairly rabbinic tone. On the one hand, yes, and on the other hand, no. Let's start with the no first. Is anti-Semitism the worst it's ever been? No. Anti-Semitism is known as the world's oldest form of hatred because it's been around for millennia. Way before Charles Lindbergh spewed his anti-Jewish poison, long before Henry Ford printed copies of the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion and distributed them through his national dealer network, even before Hitler started his methodical plan to annihilate Jews from the face of the earth, there was anti-Jewish hatred. Earlier this week, we celebrated Purim by reading the Megillah and telling the story of Queen Esther, who saved her people by standing up against one man who had convinced the king to kill all the Jews. Last Shabbat, we read Parshat Zachor, which reminds us of the Amaleks and God's instruction to blot them out. In fact, it's so important for us to remember to forget the Amaleks that when creating a Torah, the scribe tests the quill and ink by writing the word Amalek and then crossing it out 3 times to be able to obliterate this biblical enemy of the Jewish people. There are literally hundreds of other examples where nefarious haters have tried to destroy our people. So no, in many ways, anti-Semitism has been worse than what we are experiencing now. However, in the yes column, as in yes, anti-Semitism has gotten worse in the last several years, we have seen a very strong rise in Jewish hatred in this country and worldwide. In addition to seeing the numbers rising, we see incidents becoming bolder and without shame. How do I know this? I know because for more than 4 decades, ADL has collected, analyzed, and reported data through our national audit of anti-Semitic incidents. We carefully track this data and verify the reports to make the information public. We are known for our attention to detail, and we are often called to testify in Congress as the subject matter experts in anti-Semitism data and research. So let me give you some statistics. In this century, in the early 2000s, anti-Semitism was waning. But beginning around 2015, we began to record double-digit increases in anti-Semitic incidents. In 2016, the number of incidents ADL reported nationally was 1,267. In 2021, the national number was 2,717, the most ever reported since ADL has been tracking data. That's an increase of 47% in 5 years. We have not released our 2022 figures yet. It's coming very soon, but I can tell you they are very high. In Michigan, we over-index in terms of population. We've watched the numbers grow and grow. By the way, it's not just the Jewish community that's under attack. My office received 263 calls last year, cases of hatred. About half, a little over half, were anti-Jewish. The others were a mixture of racism, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-Asian, and other forms of hatred. We know incidents of anti-Semitism are underreported. How many of you have had an incident that happened to you or someone you know and you didn't report it? I know the number is high. I'm going to give you one more statistic. Last Thursday, a couple days ago, ADL released its white supremacy propaganda report, which included propaganda incidents from the Goyim Defense League. Yes, I said the Goyim Defense League. This is a virulent anti-Semitic group whose only mission is to hassle Jews and spread anti-Semitic conspiracies. In Thursday's report, it showed that Michigan ranked 4th in the nation with 355 total incidents of white supremacy propaganda. These are not incidents of general harassment. These are incidents of propaganda, which was a 132% increase over last year. This is such a worrisome report that yesterday morning, the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Michigan, Mr. Trotman, called me to meet because this data confirmed his suspicions about hot spots in his district. So no, anti-Semitism is nothing new, and yes, the rise of anti-Semitism over the last few years is very troubling. But what's driving this rise? At ADL, we attribute it to a few basic things: ignorance, the political divide, and social media. Let me explain. First, ignorance. As we get farther from the Holocaust, our young people, particularly those who are not Jewish, are not exposed to the conversations about Hitler's final solution. I remember as a young girl noticing the numbers tattooed on the kind man who ran the snack bar at our local bowling alley. My parents explained to me what those numbers represented. I saw this man every week, and I was reminded of the horror of his story every time he wore a short-sleeved uniform. But it's not only young people that are becoming ignorant of the dangers of the Holocaust. Global surveys show that the numbers are growing where adults can't even identify fact from fiction when it comes to typical anti-Semitic slurs. The second reason that we are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism is the political discord in this country. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. Anti-Semitism comes from across the ideological spectrum. We see bold and horrible mass murders from right-wing extremists and neo-Nazis. And we see the insidious cancer-like creep of BDS and anti-Zionism coming from the left. Both are problems. Calling someone a Nazi because they disagree with you trivializes the suffering of the Holocaust. We speak out against that. But it's become a common practice. It's become commonized, almost popularized. The third attribute to the higher numbers, and certainly the thing that worries me the most, is the rise of social media. Don't get me wrong. I love the fact that I can use my phone to gain knowledge. But this little device is probably the most powerful tool placed in the hands of the average person in all of human history. And it was given without any sort of guidelines or rules of engagement. For the last decade or so, we've seen the rise of haters on both sides of the political spectrum use technology, use this device to actively foment hatred and sow discord. Immediately following Kanye West's initial rant on Twitter last fall, we saw a huge increase in references to West on social media, often paired with swastikas or other anti-Semitic slurs, and the hashtag #YeWasRight. There were more than 30 incidents tied specifically to his tweets. And this is something we can act on. We must put pressure on digital companies to set guidelines and to stick to those guidelines. We must insist that monitoring continues to happen. It's very important to nurture strong relationships, and I spend a tremendous amount of my time on that. At ADL, we share information with law enforcement regularly. Earlier, I mentioned the U.S. Attorney reached out to me this week. I have regular conversations with members of the FBI, the state police, the Attorney General. We all know each other, and we share important facts to be able to ameliorate a situation, and when a crime has occurred, to be able to ensure that the people are prosecuted. Now, let me assure you, most of the incidents that come across my desk do not involve law enforcement, do not involve crimes, but they are the nagging, hurtful, and troubling cases. They involve schools or sports teams or community spaces. They are sometimes veiled in free speech or lofty anti-Israel rhetoric. They cause visceral reactions, and they tear at us as Jews. And they foster an undercurrent of anxiety and fear. And that is just what the perpetrators of these acts are trying to do, trying to breed an undertone. We cannot surrender to it. Please know my team is here for you, to talk you through tough situations, to work with our partners to ensure appropriate measures are taken, and to reach out to allies who can help. So what can you all do? At ADL, we say, stand up, share facts, show strength. What exactly do I mean by that? Stand up. When you witness an act of anti-Semitism, or if an incident happens to you, call it out. Now, you could say something to disrupt or discourage the conversation pretty easily, but I don't advocate fighting with people you don't know. If you're in a restaurant or in unfamiliar surroundings with people who are strangers, please walk away. Chances are you won't be able to affect a change with a total stranger anyway, and you have no way of knowing what they will do in return. But report it and tell a manager that you are feeling uncomfortable with a patron and let them kick the person out. Now, if you are at a dinner party or a picnic or in a classroom or at work and somebody says something anti-Semitic, do not let that pass. When you know the person, you need to call it out and weigh the situation. Is it best to bring it up in front of the group, like stop it in its tracks? Or would they be more receptive to the situation if you pulled them aside? These can be awkward or uncomfortable conversations, so it's best to run some scenarios through your mind and know who you're talking to. Maybe they are not Jewish and they don't have any idea that what they said was offensive. Sometimes a simple question, like, what do you mean by that, can disrupt an anti-Semitic slur. We can offer education programs and suggestions to help people run scenarios at ADL, and we do that all the time. We must also stand up to people in positions of authority who are normalizing bigoted behavior and anti-Semitism. Influencers and elected officials at all levels must be held accountable by us. Failing to speak out when a sports figure or a celebrity or a politician spews anti-Semitic rhetoric equals complicity, and we cannot tolerate that. At Congregation Zedek, you are standing up. This year, CSZ has become a Kulanu congregation. ADL created Kulanu, which means all of us, to empower synagogue communities and fight against the hate and scourge of anti-Semitism. It formalizes a process to provide education, advocacy, resources, and community engagement. A Kulanu committee has been set up here at Shaarey Zedek, and it's led by David Kramer. Seek him out and offer to help. Discussing the problem like we are doing today can also help. The second thing I would say is share facts. Know what you're talking about. Don't just report something on Facebook or get your news from your best friend's cousin's spouse. Be able to articulate what the frequent anti-Semitic tropes are, where they came from, and that way you can dismantle the misinformation. Knowledge is power, and when we understand things, we can resist the temptation to yield to fear. Understand the ideology of hate groups and make sure you know what's going on in places like school board meetings or community forums. Again, ADL can offer assistance. Our website is full of resources, and I brought a handout today. It's outside on the table, and I will email it to Rabbi Starr so he can make it available electronically. There are links on both sides of the sheet of paper. Again, my personal appeal about social media. ADL is hard at work behind the scenes trying to convince digital companies to set standards, but individuals must demand digital platforms shore up their rules and remain vigilant on hateful content. Make no mistake, this is not freedom of speech. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, these platforms are businesses. These digital companies are making money through these sites while they are becoming super spreaders of the anti-Semitism disease. Sometimes unwittingly, we as individuals contribute to the virtual spread by throwing messages over social media without checking our facts. If you experience an incident, again, report it first. Don't commiserate with friends asking what to do over social media. And please do not send things on social media without first checking your information. Sometimes in our quest to get everything instantly these days, we skip the important step of understanding a situation. Now, I do not mean refrain from communicating. I mean being smart with our communication over this device. And finally, show strength. We must work together in solidarity, Jews and non-Jews, with others who are targeted. Anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred are big problems, and they require a big tent with lots of people under it. I know there are people that say Jews have to rely on themselves and we need to handle anti-Semitism alone. But believe me when I tell you, we cannot go this alone. We must depend on others, and we must be good allies ourselves. The reason ADL's mission has not changed in a century and remains to this day to fight the defamation of the Jewish people and secure equal justice and fair treatment to all is that our founders knew that Jewish people would not be safe until all people were safe, and no one would be safe until the Jews were safe. We must help people who are not Jewish understand the significance of what we face and how it connects to them. And we must report incidents, no matter how small the incident is, because, folks, data drives decisions. Earlier I mentioned social media worries me the most. That's not quite right. There's one thing that worries me more, and that is the splitting of our Jewish community. We must, as a people, stop trying to convince others which type of anti-Semitism is more dangerous. The truth is, all anti-Semitism is dangerous, and it is crucial that we stop arguing about this. In my job, I can tell you there is no difference in hurt to somebody who is targeted by a hater on the right or somebody who's targeted by a hater on the left. And as Abraham Lincoln famously said, a house divided cannot stand. We must stick together as Jews. Our history has shown us to be a tenacious and bright people. So it does not matter where anti-Semitism comes from. We combat it together and we remain vigilant. Call me anytime. My phone number is on that sheet of paper at the back of the room. My team is always willing to help. I'll be here after the service, and I would love to speak with any one of you, answer any question that you have. Thank you so much for allowing me this simcha today. Being present in a sanctuary on Shabbat is always special. The fact that you have given me time to address the congregation feeds my soul. I tell my team all the time, the good stuff makes the terrible bearable. This is the good stuff. And I appreciate you all. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Yasher Koach. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for your words this morning and for all that you do for the Jewish people and for the world day in and day out. So we battle ignorance through education. We battle the rhetoric through our own mindfulness of words and how words are used, including putting others into check. And of course, we keep tabs on social media and how we use social media. We come together with our interfaith partners, and hopefully you know Shaarey Zedek does a lot of interfaith work. Thank you for your support on that. And also we come together as one community to battle anti-Semitism on the right and on the left. And we are grateful for everything that Carolyn does, including helping us to form this Kulanu group that she announced. We're going to have a number of programs coming up. This is really kind of the kickoff of it, but over the summer and in the coming months, we want to especially work with our college students and our high school students because of the incredible amount of anti-Semitism they face on the college campus and even in their own schools. Carolyn, thank you so much. May God bless you, and thank you for your holy efforts.